challenges, but at the end you might have a higher profit. And the company we run, Alexander will join us in a couple of minutes. I founded it with the former CEO of the AOK, so the biggest German health insurance, covering 25 million, probably 25 million persons, and spending 225 million euros a day for health. And I met Jürgen, so my co-founder, approximately 12 years ago when I joined Springer Nature, not Springer, not Axel Springer, but it was former Julius Springer. And over those years I became a good friend of Jürgen, and we found out that stakeholders in the system are not really willing to change the system in health. And the first question I always ask you, why did you select the most complex market to run your startup and your business? Because there are a lot of markets which are quite easy to understand. So you are already a generation not really used to have a must-have of a driving license. But I would like to take the example of a driving license, why it's much easier to do something in automotion or car industry, or because we all understand the process. We all, if we have a driving license, and even if we don't, already in the kindergarten people tell us on which side of the road a car will apparently drive or not. And we know when we have our first language school in England that they drive on the other side of the road, but furthermore the regulation is quite the same over the entire world. So there is tension that things are easier when we have a general understanding on how things are going to happen. In healthcare that's much more complicated, because things often are not what they seem to be. And just looking on the 12 companies being here, it's like one question I always ask is the relationship you're looking at also the relationship you should target, because often in health, in fact, it's quite easy. What we assume is we have a patient and a doctor, and as long as it is like this, it's quite easy to handle. The problem is that this is not really true. The patient is coming with a problem to the doctor, but somebody else is going to pay the doctor for what he's doing. Apparently, between this, there is again somebody else who is going to look, is he going to be paid? And how much? And then there is one more complicated thing, is that they're going to look, is he doing too much? So on the quantity, and on the quality, is he doing the right thing? And if this is not true, this is not going to happen, and if there are too many of them, he's not going to be paid. Most people don't know that for example, with telemedicine, I spoke to people, and I mean, telemedicine is something we are quite enthusiastic about in the decision of the Chamber of Physicians, that they decided to allow patients who have not seen the doctor live before to do a teleconsultation. And we are quite hyper about this. The problem is that the regulation on how is this going to be paid is not in place right now, because a doctor is only paid once a quarter, so a maximum of 4 times a year for doing the consultation. So if you ask most of the physicians, they would not be too happy about people calling every day. Mm-hmm. But because this is deficit, this is negative income. So there is not yet a real big group of physicians telling, well, this is going to be the future, that all those grandmas, grandpas, they are using their pension and they either go to do their hair or they go to see a doctor. You should understand that in Germany, 17 visits a year per head at physicians. You just told you were in Norway for a couple of years. In Holland, a patient sees a doctor 4 times a year. No? Life expectation is quite the same. The reason is that we have a different culture on health, and we do have a different system. So back to the telemedicine. In telemedicine, people told, well, this is going to be great. And I had the opportunity to talk to Medgate in Switzerland, who are doing telemedicine since 1999. Because in Switzerland, this is legal since long. And they told, the problem with telemedicine is that we found out that a teleconsultation takes 3 times as long as a live consultation. So it doesn't make sense for a doctor because he is paid the same, only once in a quarter, and he needs triple the time he would need instead of having the patient in his local consultation, live consultation. So they found out a long time ago this is not going to work, and this is the first thing I would like to tell you before you run with your idea. Start to understand what happened before. Start to understand how the system really is connecting to each other, and probably don't go where everybody goes. And this is more and more a challenge because e-health is a kind of next religion. Everybody thinks by e-health everything is going to be much, much better. And I want to draw something else on that one, because health is quite irrational. While we spend, and this is always the figure, right? So don't take if I tell about 300 billion if it's 310 or 290, because it's more about was it yesterday or is it tomorrow, but we spend 300 billion on health.
In Germany.
In Germany, only in Germany.
It's impressive.
And that's only the first, this is only first tier market, so everything which is reimbursed or paid by insurance. How much do you think of the 300 billion are spent on avoiding illnesses?
I believe 10%.
10 billion.
10 billion?
10 billion is quite good, it's 3%.
3%.
Yeah? 97% of what we do is spent on diagnostics and curing.
Okay.
How much do you think of the 97% is avoidable? That's just behavioral change. How much do you think that is?
Maybe half.
70%.
How much?
70%?
Quite good. 80% could be avoided.
80%.
Yeah?
From 97.
Of the 97%, so this is still 291 billion. Yeah? We could avoid approximately 80% if we would have 100% of the population in best state behavioral.
Okay.
Huh? As I'm not idealistic, I think this is not going to happen, but it's quite sure that if I put up 1% here, I would have a higher impact than just losing 1% of the cost on that side. Who is the one who is doing the stroke, early detection stroke project?
They're not here, not you.
We detect arrhythmia, heart attack, and so on, the early signs of that.
So this is exactly what you could look at, is on if I could interact earlier, how much will it take away from that side and how much will it bring to that side?
Okay.
The problem is that even if you do so, Yet there is not an institutional regulation how to bring money from this side to that side. And that brings us to the jungle. Because out there is nobody but the patient who is willing to give from this money to somebody who is acting on that side.
Okay.
Because nobody's used to that. Physicians are not used in keeping healthy. That's not their profession.
Yeah, absolutely.
They heal. They do not avoid. We don't have a reimbursement regulatory that is telling that, for example, we could make up that it's much better to say if you have 1,000 patients, you have a health score, and the higher the health score is, the more you get paid. That would be a regulation that would help to bring money here, because then the physician would say, well, I have 1,000 patients, I didn't let them all, on 1,000 patients, you would normally see approximately 100 to 120 people suffering diabetes, of which, again, 100 wouldn't need to suffer diabetes if somebody would have helped them
Before.
and help well. What we can tell about you, also about me, you should better lose 10 kilos of weight. How is your sleep? How is your nutrition? How is your, and we could do much more to avoid, and you never would have to suffer diabetes if I acted that side. And if you ask me, what is the long-term impact of e-health? It's not on this side. It's mainly here. But it's not going to work if we don't take all stakeholders into our boat, telling them that it is much more interesting to help people not get ill. Give you another sample. What do you think, how did the amount of subscribed subscribed antidepressiva improve over the last 10 years? The total amount.
Increased 3 times?
3 times. It tripled. If you ask me, and I'm very honest, it's a very good marketing story of the industry. It's marketing.
Okay.
If you do the first surveys in the kindergarten about do you have stress while going into the kindergarten, we do that by now. Yeah? We ask children aged under 6 if they feel stressed by going to the kindergarten. This is marketing. This is not scientific. Stress factors are changing, and so we see an enormous improvement on stress-related illnesses. So now we see also a lot of activity in e-health, just testifying apps telling me that I'm definitely close to a burnout. We call this self-indication. Hi. So we doubt that the pure reason of apps to have a self-indication is very, very dangerous. Why so? Because a lot of patients, and this is something you should always be aware of when just making up your model. What is the problem about patients?
They're not doctors.
They never tell you the truth. They either want to be ill and they will just overtell, or they are ashamed and they don't want to be ill, though they won't tell the truth. But if you ask the patient, I'm a smoker. Yeah? It's not clever. We could talk a lot about why do we do things we don't want to do, but I was conditioned from the time of my parenthood, if I was asked, to say, I don't smoke that much, only a couple of cigarettes a day. Do you drink? No, only in the weekend. Yeah?
Yeah.
So as a patient, we are quite well conditioned in what do I want as a result. Is it a relaxation for my parents and tell, well, I'm just really, I want to stop and I don't smoke that much and so. And you see that, I mean, one of the biggest diseases we have is alcohol. Yeah, so cigarettes and alcohol are two real health problems. But you won't find one person in the world who says, well, yeah, I drink much too much and I'm addicted. Yeah, sometimes you see it in public, and when it's an A-level film star or something, you will see that he is going to a sports clinic and he will just solve the problem. And normally we then also see it's very difficult for them to solve the problem. But nobody would go to a doctor in his free will without somebody from outside telling him you should see a doctor or an ambulator. It's very difficult to bring a patient who is, by definition, what is his illness? It's addiction. But it will have tremendous impact on everything what's going to happen to him or her. So patients are not really, if you give them an app, and my neighbor is telling, well, I have to stay home for 2 weeks because I have a burnout. And you're telling, what is your job then? Yeah, well, I'm doing the garden of the Bundespräsident, and it's a really stressful job. We condition people to get into a burnout. We are telling them that they're close to a burnout. So, but what is the problem?
Sorry.
Cheers. The problem is that if you go to Bayer, for example, his partner, isn't it? Boehringer. Let's go to Boehringer, doesn't matter. If you go to Boehringer, I mean, they do quite well when the number of people feeling stressed triples within 10 years. Because they also tripled their amount of sold drugs over the counter and prescribed drugs. And we didn't talk about them right here, but it's good to explain. I mean, you cannot deliver as many drugs as you want. At a certain point, patients have to pay themselves. At a certain point, the doctor said you're prescribing too much or not enough. Yeah, it all happens. But the problem is in the system you're entering, there is no negative prediction on revenue. So of course, Bayer is selling, if we would have 5% more stressed people, we could sell 5% more drugs. So why should they be enthusiastic about somebody telling, honestly, do one exercise with your app a day and you won't need any drugs? They are completely uninterested in having such a tool. They are very well connected to pharmacies who are selling these drugs. They earn their money by selling these drugs. Physicians earn their money not by telling you are healthy, but by telling you you need a therapy. So what happens by nature is that it's good to have more sick people. And now you are running against this. And they are all planning today, while we are talking here, they are planning their growth for 2090. And I said, well, it happened, so we can grow, yeah? And then they're talking about 5, 6, or 10%. And if it doesn't work, we go to hypertonia. Yeah? If there are not enough hypertonists in Germany, what do?
We lower the threshold.
We lower the threshold and tell people, well, we have found an additional 1.2 million people, we think they are ill. We don't tell them that they could also solve the problem, again, by losing some weight, by doing some sports, by changing their patterns. Because we want to sell drugs, we want to indicate hypertonia, we want to have these patients. Also the insurances wants to have them because the regulation tells that all the money which is collected is just dumped in one big fund. So you are, in average, young and healthy. Yeah? So what do? Every payer is just paying a percentage, and then it's collected by state. And then they say to the insurance, if you have more ill people than your competitor, you will get more money.
Gosh.
This is how it works. So if I'm a hypertonist with diabetes and close to burnout, I'm worth triple the amount to an insurance compared to being healthy. This led to a scandal that's discussed right now, but I want to tell you how complex it is. This went to be a scandal because what did insurances do? They told the physicians, hey, how was it your place? And you said he only had a flu. Did you measure his blood pressure? And could you please do it twice, because if it's once above the threshold, you could indicate him being a hypertonic. And that would mean that apparently we get €1,200 more for the guy who only came to have some days of rest. Huh? And they can do that for the rest of my lifetime. Because this check is never going to be taken away again. So we really believe that right now everything is happening here. And you are the nerdy few who is telling all the stakeholders it's much better to spend money there. So, but what is happening, and this is something you can use, and now we'll go to something which is more difficult. Pharmaceutical companies tend to buy companies for a huge amount of money once they are sure this is going to be a blockbuster. This happened, which is an impressive sample that they can also really miss the point. Gilead acquired a medication against hepatitis C a couple of years ago. And they paid $2 billion. And then they said, well, we can cure hepatitis C, which is interesting because the cost of hepatitis C are not that high, but it's dangerous. And it's not really comfortable for the patient. And then they said, well, it's unique. So we charge approximately €100,000 per medication per year. And there was a big shitstorm. How can this be that they charge you $100,000? It's by pills, so it's easy. It's a self-medication effect. So, and I think the pills costs are definitely, like in production, might be a couple of cents. But then they decided, okay, we can cure this, and we are the only ones who can do this. So we take $100,000 per patient per year, and you need 2 years. I think it's a 2 years therapy, and then you are clean. Hepatitis C is gone. What they missed is if you cure it, you won't see reinfections. So within 3 years, we nearly don't see any hepatitis C anymore in Germany, and in the countries where we just decided to pay €100,000. And this now leads to the fact that, for example, there is a much lower need for liver transplantations. Because the long-term result of hepatitis C was the need of a new liver. And the number of liver transplantations went down 80% within period of 3 to 5 years. Which means sometimes we think something is expensive, but it might have a high impact at the end of the process. So, and now we're looking on how can you with eHealth become a partner of somebody who's conditioned doing these kinds of things, and that's difficult. Yeah? How do we pair you to companies who are used to let's sell more of the same, and you with your revolutionary, disrupting, and enthusiastic approach of telling we could avoid, or we could detect, or we could improve. And they're not yet used in buying things for 20 million because they were used and conditioned to buying things after study phase 3 for 2 billion. What we think, we as a company, is that they would do much better if they would acquire a set 10 companies, each 20 million a year, and say, well, we will replace our drugs with an application that is taking stress away in an early phase, and we want to avoid people to have the need for drugs at all. We want to avoid that people will come into the red indication zone of avoidable illnesses. And this is the battle you are playing. And if we look on the amount of ideas we normally see, I mean, I have seen the 12 ideas right now in your group, and to be honest, they are all true. But the challenge is not that the idea is good. The challenge is on how am I going to set up a strategy and a red line on how do I come into the system. Because, sorry to say, there are a couple of others trying the same, and I mean, probably developing a stress app is not the challenge. Probably understanding on how do I enter the market and who is going to be my strategic partner and who do I have to take to my site before approaching is important. Who of you have read that Pflegetiger? It's a German startup from Rocket. And they just resigned from the market. Why? Because they targeted a market which is not in place. And it is often not about the amount of money. Be aware, it's not only who has the most money, because if the idea is not working, you can put on as much money as you want, it's not going to work. If you have the right partners, societies, clinics, industries, insurers, and you come up with an idea which is long-term impact on systematic improvement into the system, it could work. It will take some longer. But I think this is also, the unicorns are not born from today till tomorrow. And in health, it doesn't have to be a unicorn at all, because you always work with two elements. That's the value, and that's the ethics, which is also different from most of other branches, is you're working with people who want to work on health, on people. If you look at all the nurses and the care, I mean, nobody's going to do that job just because of the money. They do this because they want to work with people. And so, for example, tying up with these kind of stakeholders that also have a problem, that also have a challenge, and say, how can we match up with somebody who is already suffering a serious danger in the system, can be a very, very interesting model. What's Hebamme?
Midwife.
Midwife? Okay. In Germany, we see that midwives can't do their job anymore. There is no coverage. They can't get an insurance. And I mean, everybody needs one once he she gets, or when families want to have a child and get pregnant. So, tying up an idea with midwives is a good peer, because they suffer problem, because they can't offer service nationwide. And on the other hand, all pregnant women know that one of the most important persons during their pregnancy is a midwife.
Yeah.
And I would like to have a connection to a midwife from day one of my pregnancy, whenever possible. And they are the best possible reference for what we could put on some digital solutions. I know, okay, we match you up. Yeah? And so, looking on who can be your reference partner in the system is often a very good idea. The second thing is, one of our co-founders is Eckhard von Hirschhausen, and I'm allowed to talk about him like this. He is a stand-up comedian, but he is originally a physician. Very, very successful. He's one of the top booksellers in Germany. He writes a book every 2 years, so he could live from writing books, stand alone. I think he does 150 shows a year. He has some television shows. He is a doctor, and he can transfer information to a broad audience. The problem is, if I talk to a physician, which he apparently also is, they call him a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And I say, well, he's a nice guy, but he's not a doctor.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if I fell ill, I'm not going to Eckhart. Yeah? So, most of you have one physician in their board. And I'm originally an architect. The problem is, if you have one physician, all the others are going to tell you why he is wrong. This is typical. If an architect wins a competition, all the others are not telling him why it's correct that he has won. They are explaining why the wrong guy has won the competition. So, if you peer up with a society or a group of physicians, this will help you to be robust against people like, oh, Eckhart, he's a comedian. And this is what happens all the time. And if you say, well, we have a good neurologist, he advised us. Yeah? Be aware, I've been working for Springer Nature 10 years. Yeah? If you just put on the chief editor, nobody is going to read it. If you call a board of editors with 10 renamed physicians, they will start to believe you. And do not hesitate to put on 2 or 3 additional ones, because it will help you to understand better. And it will also show you that if you ask one, the other one is going to tell something completely different. And you need the 80% in the middle. And often the most enthusiastic is just missing the point that the 80% who have to use you and who have to advise you are not the most enthusiastic. They are the most skeptic. And that's what we often see. So you have a board and we have one physician, or maybe there are 2. Look for the societies and peer with them, involve them early. They are not competitors, because they all are not going to solve any problem on their own. That's not their job. They never did before. They're not solving problems. They're not doing innovation. They're not coming up with products. They never made a drug. They never made a medical device. But they can be the best lobby for you. They have their own summits. They have their own meetings. And if they put on their stand, this is from the German Internal Medical Society, we backed them up, and they discussed with our science boards about what they are delivering in the market. It doesn't cost you anything. They won't charge you for this because they want to be part of this innovative business. So go to them, talk to them. Insurances. Yeah.
I have a question about association. We're doing hand rehabilitation solution and are now going to make some partnership with association here in Germany. What the value can be for them? Not only like be a part of innovation, how we can better connect with them.
Well, I think being part of the innovation will get more and more important for them, because with the amount coming into the market, they have another problem. If they don't select, they will overwhelmed by people telling them what they have to do, and that's what people hate. So you better sit in front and say, I'm with the guy who's driving or with the person who's driving, than sitting in the back and where are we going? This is what is happening right now. So, but they are a bit hyperactive. But there is a lot of pressure on a lot of stakeholders to become at least part of what is happening. We tend to call it the circus. Everybody is showing his trick. Oh, great. But so it's not that they do not have any direct interest in being part of the innovation process. And of course, if they team up with you, and we're coming to some other points, and if they can connect that with, you also have a partnering with an insurance, or you also have a partnering with XYZ, you get more interesting. This is not the only thing, the only instrument you have to use. The second thing, what you can do is, why should you always take money? So I told about, is it about the acceleration, or is it about I have the right partners? And why shouldn't you make them a partner also in business? You always, the first thing you do is, we need an ESOP for the people who are going to be part of our company. I think this is going to be business. I often have that discussion about most investors say, oh, don't take a strategic investor in the early stage, for example. So this is not directly, but they all say, don't take a strategic investor. I think the best thing you can do, if you know who is the right strategic partner, is to involve him as early as possible. Why so? Because in the early phase, it's very easy to copy what is happening in the market. If you're not a hybrid complex, I have a hardware part, I have a IP patented algorithm part, but I just have something which is more or less commodity. But what I put in is my intellectual capacity to make something because I saw a problem and I'm going to solve the problem. But back to the stress apps, I think there are right now only in Germany 50 stress apps. I couldn't bet who's going to win. But if you have a strategic partnership on stress apps with the owner of Life, for example, which is the highest revenue OTC drugs against stress, they are for sure already occupying the market. So if you have them in, they won't look at the other 49. They say, no, we decided for a solution. We are going to do this with XYZ. We are also, yes, we have a minority stake. We have a combined plan. Because what they know is that they're gonna lose on the long term a stake on their drugs market towards the digital health market. They know this. They say, but maybe we are lucky and it will take 3-4 more years. If you tie up to them and say, we are going to solve your problem, it's fantastic. So this is one sample. Or you can go to Rose Shop Apotheke and tell, well, you have so many patients. Doc Morris has 9 million unique customers by the end of 2008. 9 million. So this makes them comparable to approximately 2,000 pharmacies. No?
What is the name again?
Doc Morris.
Doc Morris.
If you team up with Doc Morris and say, they are all buying this stuff at your place, let's add a digital tool to them, which is free if you buy online and which you can pay out of your pocket if you don't buy your products at Doc Morris. It's a very easy entrance. Or let's say if you go to Clear Blue and say they do 4 million pregnancy tests in Germany. And you tell them, I have a freemium model with my pregnancy app. It's free for 3 months, you don't have to pay anything. It's free, let's develop it together. You know the market. They know the market better than you will ever know it. Because they have all the figures, they have all the details. What can go wrong? How many pregnancies really come to birth? How many pregnancies end up in the first 2 months? They know everything. And then we are coming with a company just collecting the first 200,000–300,000 euro and say, we are going to tell them how the market works. We're never going to succeed. But if we match up to them and say, well, let's do a product together. We have a very good vision on this, and we want to be at the point of entry in the process because you don't want to sell pregnancy tests. You want to sell an app which is accompany midwives to your pregnancy. So you can perfectly match it up. And you will always find 2, 3, 4, 5 logical entry points in the market. That means you are not going to spend 80% of your expensive money on a marketing bet, which you will always be dependent on, is there somebody else spending more money on the marketing? This brings me back to Fliegertiger. Yeah? They double up the marketing spendings month by month. This will cost 1 million lives in the sense of other startups will fail because they can't match up with that. And it's not about who is the better one. It's only about who is going to win. So find your strategic partners early, mix them up, motivate them to do this with you, and either you give them something for free, you give them a period of first mover, you give them a stamp. I mean, and everybody is today interested in being part of digitization. So everybody is looking to find people. And the only thing is that you should really look before who is the fitting partner. So I would advise everybody, if you make a list of the 10 most wanted partners for your idea. And that doesn't mean you need 10 partners, but I think this is one of the most important things we miss in the early phase because we are not aware on who should we hook up with. Because he is doubling, tripling, or whatever, my success factor on what I'm doing. And if you ask, most people don't know this, so the most young companies, if you ask them, who would you want to match up with? 1, 2, 3. I know Sabine Bienstein, she's very nice, and she told me this is very good what we're doing. No. Who are the 3 biggest companies doing business in your segment? Who is earning the money right now? Because they are going to be your competitor. And either they're going to be your friend or they're your competitor. And if, to be honest, if you want to defeat Roche, They will find by their lawyers something they can stop you whenever they want. If you want to beat Allianz, you're not going to succeed. So do it the other way around and tell them, dear Mr. Hagenfundner, we offer you a great idea with an enthusiastic team. We don't want you to be a minority stakeholder, but we would love to cooperate with you because we think that we are a perfect match. He's going to listen, at least. Maybe somebody else is going to have a look first, but they will just have a look. But if you don't know who are those partners I want, because you are focusing on we are going to do this on our own, and we're going to have millions from people who spend it because they believe us, no. And that doesn't mean that there are not samples of people who succeeded that way. But you are 12, and if you, it seems that you have a good atmosphere, so in fact you want to have 12 of 12 in the market. Your own idea as first, but I would assume that you would just feel quite enthusiastic if all the other 11 are also going to succeed. And that's not on the money one. That's on, are you matching up with the right people early enough?
So, if it comes to that game, like considering pharma or insurance companies, and you somehow have to decide on which side you want to play. So what are like key questions to ask yourself to find a good decision?
Let's come to the insurances. The insurances also have the same problem. They know how they are paying the system right now, and they also have the problem that they don't understand yet. They pay €3 a year for health management of this side. €3. Out of 4,000 and something they pay per patient a year. €3 are here by law. It's not spent. They don't know how. This is a legislation problem because when Bismarck invented the German system, he didn't know that there might be a digital component. And so far, law is not describing how can you charge for digital
Sorry,
prevention.
the 3% is innovation budget or revenue? 2% of what?
No, €3. This is the 3% out of 300 billion we spent in the first health market. But insurances only have a legislation that they have to spend at a minimum of €3, but they don't know how to
Out
do
of
it.
100?
Per patient per year, right?
Per patient per year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out of 4,000 in average.
So it's on an 80 million base. It's 240 million. They hardly know how to do it. That's the reason why they said, well, also a telephone is something digital, so we put it on the telephone budget. On the other hand, they know that it makes sense to find solutions to stop quantity-driven medicine. I'll give you a sample for an idea. There is no startup doing that, but it's a good sample because it also shows how national and international things could match up. If you are living in the UK, you won't get an endoscopy when you are elder than 70.
What?
A new hip. Huh? So we don't pay that because it doesn't make sense. Why take a wheelchair? Yeah? We're not going to operate people elder than 70. In Germany, apparently, we found out that it's very, very, very interesting for clinics to replace hips. because it's making a tremendous amount of profit. We are right now operating 220,000 hips a year. The bloody thing is that of those 220,000, nearly half is operated around the age of 70. Which makes it, the reason why the NHS says we don't do that from 70 is because rehabilitation and the outcome is often low. Because if you have an operation on persons, if elder 70, they might not get mobile anymore at all. So artificial intelligence, in fact, would help to understand from each of you, we could tell if you are going to need an artificial hip with a certain percentage of accuracy. And if we take the statistics, and it's going on like this, every fifth person in this room is going to have an artificial hip at a certain point. But I can tell you if it's you or you or you. And I can also tell you the best age to do this would be 45 to 50, because I already know it's going to happen. And we did not yet understand that, in fact, if the physician can predict with the assistant of the system on what's the best timing to do the operation, so what is the best outcome, I think that for insurances it should be a kind of routine. So, is this logic? You are telling Harm needs an artificial hip. He's not overrated. He has been doing sports, but not excessive, because people who do a lot of sports are more endangered than people who do an average of sports. In his family, nobody had hip problems so far. That's also a very, very important indication. So we think if it's going to happen to him, it's going to happen around 55, 60, but we don't think it's going to happen. So we don't have to give the advice, and if a doctor says you need an artificial hip, we say, well, we have a score, we don't think this is realistic, so we have to double check. This is all available, we don't do this, which is ridiculous, but it's going to come. What we could do more is tell a patient to be also responsible for best possible outcome. So here everybody gets it. In England, if you are aged over 70, even if you are completely out of hip, you won't get one. If we change the quantity by prediction, in Germany we could halve the number of hips, by the way. But the real cost driver is not the hip itself, but is the freedom of patient's will that he will tell the first 10 years, no, I don't want it. I want a massage. The next 10 years, which is reimbursed. Because I think it's still okay. It will go. And then the pain comes, then he wants drugs because he wants the pain therapy. And he becomes immobile. He is not going to work because he has problems 20 days a year. So the cost driver for the wrong timing or the right decision is much higher than doing the operation. And what insurances will change, my prediction, they will tell if we can predict which is the best timing for a particular patient, we will fully reimburse at the optimized timing. So if the doctor says you should have an artificial hip, we're not going to do 10 years of bullshit anymore. You have 2 years time to do the operation, and if you don't do that, we will charge you 10% per year you are in delay on doing this operation. But we will still pay it. But you will have a part you have to pay yourself. And this is where the insurance side is going to have a complete other perspective on what digital could mean. Give you another sample from the start. We company Mimi. Mimi is in fact a lifestyle product which makes earphones personalized. It's nice, very functional product. But to do so, they do need a hearing test. So they make a personal earprint. If a patient wants to see a doctor today to do a hearing test, he can go to the doctor, he can sit down and say, I want a hearing test. And the doctor is charging €38, which is a fair price, but the problem is that only 20% of those people who go there have a hearing problem. So in fact, each really defined or useful hearing test is not costing 38, but €200. If I have a tool which tells you you can go to a doctor and have a hearing test, but please, before you go and before we make an appointment, we would ask you to do a 2-minute test on your iPhone. And this is telling you if you're positive or negative and if it makes sense to go to the doctor. This is a very easy mechanism which could save €160, which we don't have to put back in our pocket, because what we could tell is, and then it gets a story, we will pay you in future, dear HNO, dear doctor, we're going to pay you €60 per test. So you will earn more on those who need your help. Another €40 we're going to pay for all those digital tests, people we don't send. And so the doctor earns more on patients. We have a digital gatekeeper, and the insurance saves €100. Then you have a story. Because in other words, the physician is going to say, this is good because they didn't study 6 years to do hearing tests to people who don't need it. I mean, it's a stupid thing. So by bringing these points together, you can model it to something which makes sense to all stakeholders who are afraid of they're going to take my money. And this is what you have to look at, is what is my innovation doing to stakeholders? Is it threatening them or is it motivating them? Am I going to do something which an insurance is also going to believe? Because the problem is that most things we offer to insurances, like, we're going to save costs. I have a good sample because it's definitely a good startup in the sense of investing. My Sugar. Who knows My Sugar? It's a diabetes app. It's a diabetes diary, and we have been talking to them. We decided not to invest in them because please understand, this is not, they did a good job. We decided not to invest in them because we said, sorry, but you are really working on accepting that somebody has diabetes. We think we only invest in things that would avoid diabetes. So, but they sold it to Roche.
You should have invested. And you should have invested.
On the money side, would have been a good earning. But on you also have to as a company, you have to stay in the market. And I mean, because we talk to a lot of real stakeholders, we wouldn't have a long-term profit on this one. Because no, because in fact, Roche bought it because they were on the stress on negotiations with insurances on the insulin reimbursement.
Why did you not invest in them? What was the reason you didn't invest?
They invested because they said, well, you know what we
didn't
do?
invest, sorry.
Huh?
That you didn't, that you chose not
Because
to.
it's not.
We
not
didn't.
prevention.
Roche acquired the company
Yes.
because the insurance said we're gonna not pay the same price for your insulin anymore. And I think they were doing approximately 800 million revenue on insulin at that time, and they were offered 600 million instead. And I said, no, we let us keep the 800 million and we put my sugar on top of it. So they acquired for 25% of the discount they should have given. They acquired a company, put it on, and it doesn't make so much sense. Huh? But for Roche, it makes sense. Problem is, we think that Roche is missing the point that also they're gonna suffer because we will see less people with diabetes. So, but the reason not to do this is sometimes that you say, did anybody explain, and that was the main reason, and if you have the former CEO of the AOK in your founder group, does anybody explain about the quality of therapy once you have diabetes? Yes. Patients are fully satisfied without having an additional app, because they say, you know, it's quite easy. I know that if I go out on Saturday, I know quite well when I get unbalanced and when I need an extra dose or not. And they are very aware of this. And the funny thing on people suffering diabetes, they want to come back in a normal state of life. They don't emphasize themselves being a patient. They don't walk with shirts around like, I'm suffering diabetes, are you? No, they want to be part of normal life. So they don't want to be stigmatized by, oh, I'm doing a diary. Oh, they don't. Only you even don't recognize them. Yeah? So if you ask the stakeholders, say, okay, did you ever have a problem with diabetes patients because they said, oh, if we don't have a digital diary, we're going to change and we take another insurance? Never ever. Never ever. So it means sometimes we define an innovation or a problem which is not there at all. Which doesn't mean you can't, I mean, that's why it's interesting, it doesn't mean you can't earn money with it. But in fact, there was nobody out there suffering a problem.
I still don't get it. So why was my sugar not valuable? I mean, people used it. They have millions of users. Must have added something to their life.
No, careful. People registered and they didn't go in a general use. And if this was true, we would see a midterm or long-term impact on having less people suffering diabetes. If Roche buys something, we're back at, yeah? Because their strategy is, we are going to avoid diabetes. That could be a deal. But they didn't acquire it because they want to lower the number of people suffering diabetes. They acquired it because they didn't want to give discounts, yeah, on their medicine. So their strategy is not yet. We as a pharmaceutical company are the protection company. We are the avoiders. We are those who are going to tell you don't need our medication. And that's where I say, again, it's not wrong to do this business, because there are people really happy who earn money. This is good. If their target was, I want to earn as much money as possible with my startup, they did everything right. The only thing is, you have to decide what is your goal. And if you say, well, I want to add on something to patients' health, I doubt that this is the best strategy to go. And back to, because then, coming from the insurance would have said, well, no, give us the 200 million discount, and we will acquire my sugar for 100 million. Would have made more sense because they could deliver it to all their patients and not only to Roche patients. So, but they never did because they said we don't see the problem. It's not addressed to us. And
just to get a little insight to that, why didn't the insurance? That would be a logical step for me from the outside to have the insurance take it and distribute it to every patient in order to reduce the diabetes patients number if it works.
yeah.
So
But isn't
So-
one?
that's the dilemma, probably. No.
That's a dilemma. That's what I said. Is
But
here.
still, what you mentioned before, if they would have less diabetes patients, they would get less money from this general fund.
Yeah, that's one problem.
So there's no incentive for the insurance company as well to reduce diabetes patients. So what I'm asking myself right now, Roche created one of the most successful German startups in the healthcare sector with that deal. So if there's not a unique case where insurances produce such a really interesting case, insurance is just not the right partner.
The sample I told you on Mimi, yeah.
Yeah.
So can it be a gatekeeper is a right story. The most stories on behavioral change, it's not a chapter, it's a problem because most behavioral change apps address those 20% who already behave quite well. And the problem is not giving them who do yoga and go to have a walk every Saturday and Sunday. They are not the addressable group. I mean, they are looking for those people who go home, lay on the couch, drink their beer, and say, "Well, I'm not going to move. I'm not. Yeah. Oh, okay. I ordered 2 pizzas." And how to reach them? They are more interested in how do you activate those who are really expensive because they behave unlogical. Yeah. So, apart from the question that the incentive on how are they getting their money from the system is wrong, but this is going to be solved on the long term.
Cannot be solved.
Risikostrukturausgleich, it's a risk exchange fund. That's how the vehicle is called, where all the insurance money goes in. Because they had the scandal, they are going to change this in the next 2 years. This is normal political timing, it doesn't go that fast. Once back to at that time, nobody understood what was the reason to put my sugar on the insulin. So the insurance didn't understand. I said, well, this sounds like a good experiment, let's try it. That's why it happened. And once again, because I don't want people to run out and say, he was blaming all, that Harm was blaming all. I'm not blaming anybody at all. I think the only thing is that this is not the long-term movement we will see in e-health. Because if that's the motivation, and that's what I want to say, then you're running on the wrong motivation. I think running on the wrong motivation is a risky path. Let's say it like that.
So running on the wrong motivation, financially or morally?
It can be both.
Yeah, well, it should be both, of course, but as the system presents itself right now, it's not possible. So what you're claiming is that we changed the whole healthcare system with like additional payment from patients by...
What I'm claiming is that as a young company, understand all stakeholders' position before you run.
Okay,
Yeah? And make a list of which is the optimized setup for me. Which partner would I need? Is it the insurance? Is it the society? Is it a clinical chain? Is it a pharmaceutical company? And normally it are at least 2 you should have. Rarely you see that it works with only one partner. So even if you have an insurance, if doctors don't like you, it's not going to work. Yeah? Or even if you have doctors if the insurance is not going to support, or if someone isn't going to tell not to do it, it's not going to work. One sample on that, somebody asked me, he had a conversation with the C-level management of Doc Morris. He said, we are going to tell them they should do telemedicine. I said, you can do that, but it's quite stupid for them to do so. Why? I said, they are battling with local pharmacies right now. They are in a real last quarter battle on how is the position of online pharmacies against local pharmacies. If they match up with telemedicine right now, they're inviting 400,000 physicians in Germany to tell them not to tell each patient not to order at Doc Morris. Not such dangerous plan. So and this is typical. Then it's a mismatch. You can't go to that. Same telemedicine company. If you go to, if you talk to home carers, and you look, there are in Germany 12,000 elderly homes. Each elderly home sends calls for an ambulance every third day, because a nurse who knows exactly what is going on is not allowed to do any medical interaction. So that means there has to come an ambulance, they go to the emergency room, they say, yeah, blood pressure is high, okay, one pill, send him back the next day. Average cost of just such a call, €850 for the system. Telemedicine makes completely sense. In this case, to tell the nurse, before you call the ambulance, call the doctor, talk to him, say you have a patient, you have been watching him all the day, she didn't drink that much, blood pressure is a bit high, unrested sleep, what should I do? And every doctor will say, give her just half a dose of a good tranquilizer, and then everything's fine. And let's see tomorrow. Here again, if you compare it to the Doc Morris model and you look at this one, this means emergency rooms hate these kind of fill-ups. I mean, they have really problems because everybody's going to the emergency room. So you take away every 3 days 12,000 emergency room visits, which are unnecessary. You empower a nurse because you tell her, before calling 112 or 911, we have a central service for you. You can have a short visit with a doctor, you can do a consultancy, and the doctor will tell you, do you have to bring this patient to hospital, yes or no? And in most cases, they won't go to the hospital in that case. The patient has the advantage that if you are brought with an ambulance to a hospital age 90, this is not good for your health, independently if there was something or not. So here everybody would say, well, let's match up because it makes sense. And this is the only thing what I tell, look on what is your triage, a triangle you have to make up in your partnership, and be aware this is one of the most important tasks in the early phase. Because you have to hunt them. It's not only about hunting money. Yeah? And the earlier you can tell we have a partnership with A, B, and that's why we think it's going to work, the more money you're going to raise. And the better is your reflection on your own idea, because that's also important. I think that 90% of the one-to-one coachings we do, the first thing is the idea is good, but it's still very rough. So we think there is another street you can go to the right and you come to the same target, but maybe we shouldn't go to the right, go to the left, and then go back on the main street thing. And this is what is the phase you're in now is looking at all these impacts there will be. Yeah? And then the thing is, and it's the same list is what money do you want? And that's also quality and quantity. Because we see a lot of startups who go in a phase when they then are ready to market, that we see that the burn increases like crazy. Yeah? And I mean, just having a good idea, sales in the medical sector is very, very hard to get. One thing is, those who are already in the market pay ridiculous amounts of money for people just going to doctors or going to pharmacists. So, how is your sales model going to work? And there is one warning: out-of-the-pocket market in Germany is not real good health market. It's very dangerous. Often we see this as we are conditioned in Germany that somebody is going to pay, but not me, when it's about health. This is already different in Switzerland. This is different. Yeah. Switzerland pays, each head pays, I think, 400 Schweizer franken a year out of the pocket. You won't see this here. So this is the next phase. You have to understand is how is my demand for money going to change, and how can I lower it? How can I control it? This can be also be by the defined partnerships or by a defined growth. Because I think that if you are good, it's not about speed anymore. Most people fear that it's like we run with 10 and the fastest is going to win. It's a very long run, so I think it's more about who is going to be the stayer on the stage, and not the one who did the first 2 months fastest. And this is, and that's an advantage from the German market. The German market is a reference market, so if you succeed in Germany, you often see that you can easily go to other countries. But also there, how is your plan on internationalization? Because what we see is if you are in a market with 2% in Germany and 0.5% in Holland and 3% in France, none of this will impress. And that means you have to go into market focus. If you have 20% in the German health market, then you can easily go to the next ones. But we see often too early movement. Yeah? Oh, we want to be worldwide, global. And then we say, yeah, but the Americans do that. And that's not true because we only think that it is like that. But normally in the US, the model is in the US for 3, 4, 5, 6 years before they enter they cross the ocean. Because if they don't have a significant market share in the US, they will never go to the UK to say, well, we didn't succeed in the US, but now we're going to do it in the UK. Yeah? And this is a reflection we always do is, why do you want to go to another country when you are still a single-digit market share in the country you started? And this is something you should have in your plan, is what is your growth path and how do you want to bring the money to the table to have this growth path. And most people like it more that you are significant in one country than you are unimportant in 5, even if it shows you're probably international. And the dynamic of growth starts when you are a market leader or an innovation leader. People will start to invite you to come to the country, but don't go there on your own. And this is mainly because cultures are so different. I mean, most of you are, I would call you global people, but the crazy thing on health is that culture is completely different. I think you're from Holland, aren't you?
No, I'm from Germany.
From Germany, okay. Somewhere from Holland?
No touch.
In Holland, we don't want to go to doctors. We hate it. We hate it.
It's a very good attitude.
Yeah?
I would say. As a doctor.
No, but so well, can I solve it myself? Good. Yeah? And because we don't have a specialist there in the field, so you only have a house doctor, which is a kind of gatekeeper, and then you can go to hospital. There is nothing in between.
Like physician, yeah?
Huh?
Family doctor, house doctor. Like
There's no,
physician.
there is not, you can't go to a cardiologist outside of the hospital in Holland. There are none.
Really?
No. You go to your house doctor, which is called a really typical huisarts, and he will tell you to go to hospital. People don't want to go to hospital. That's a culture thing, because hospital is ill. It's not about second opinion. Oh, hospital, it smells. Huh? So, by not offering this in-between layer, people say, no, don't. You have to go to hospital. No, I don't want to go to hospital. So, and I mean, apparently this is not always clever, but as people, if they go to doctor, their house doctor knows, well, if they come to me, it must be serious, so maybe they could better go to the hospital. So, but this leads to, I think I have the figure already. In Germany you go 17 times a year, in Holland 4 times a year. Number of total visits. Tell you another ridiculous thing on insurance. Insurances pay when we don't go to a doctor, you get back money.
In Holland?
Here.
Ah, here. Okay.
This is quite strange that an insurance who is insuring for my health is telling me, if you don't see a doctor, we will pay you money. But this is true. So, this is about culture. Because if I condition people that I should only go to a doctor when I really suffer something, and that the result could be that I'm sent to a hospital right away, I have a different cultural behavior and expectation on what the system is offering. On the other hand, again here, the average age expectation is the same. So there seems to be no logics between if you go 70 times you will get 5 years elder than if you go 4 times. There is no rationale between those two figures. But the funny thing is, in Holland they don't have the problem that they don't have enough doctors, because if people only go 4 times instead of 17, and the average spending on income is 15% in both countries, it means what? The doctor earns 4 times as much per visit. 4 times as much per visit. He takes 3 times the triple time for a visit.
Okay.
So in Holland you can't tell the doctor took only 3 minutes. I mean, they will say he should close, and they won't go there anymore. This is like democratic. They wouldn't go there. If a doctor said, sit down, everything fine, here, go to the pharmacy. Because if I go really, I want to be treated seriously. And this is what happens. But this is only about culture, and this is not about go to another continent. I mean, you can live 2 meters apart from Holland and have a different culture on health. In Holland, we don't have any elderly homes anymore. Why? Because we said 97% of the persons want to stay at home as long as possible. This is the same in Holland as in Germany. People don't want to go into a bunker at the end of their life to live the last 2 years in a kind of cell. I didn't do anything wrong. So they said, if we don't have it, we have to improve infrastructure on how to stay home, which is a better solution, indeed. But this is about culture. If you would tell this here, people would say, no, we can't do that. Some mayor would say, no, we need a clinic. In Holland, the density of clinics is only 25% of the density here. Why? Because they say if you have, this is also the advantage of a small country, of course, you can't do that everywhere, but if you cancer, they just say there are 6 clinics, they do cancers, and all the others don't have to deal with this. Why? We want specialists, we want the best possible. And the best possible is by every 50-kilometer radius, and then it's enough. In emergency, I would need another density, because I have a time critical factor. So, but you cannot transport, because, and it's not about which is better or not. I mean, it's like.
But why? So I think it's better in Holland.
Yeah.
I think you could transport it. Just because it's bigger, you just have to divide the country in smaller units. So I don't see the reason. Of course, I see the technical and the.
Who's going to tell those 80,000 specialists who have their own
Yes, okay, that's
business? Oh, you're out of business. We decided this politically.
yeah, that's of course. Yeah, but I think it's not a valid reason just to say Germany is so big. I think it's very unflexible and very not much innovation driven. So
Both is true, but you always see that I could also tell about the disadvantages, because this means if you only have the house doctor and he is missing the point, it's very difficult to get a second opinion. Yeah? And I've seen these kind of, the house doctor say, okay, you can have an MRT in 6 months to a person who's losing 1 kilo weight per week. So there was something mathematical not working on his model. Yeah? So there are also negative examples, but I think the most important thing is that this is about culture. People expect to do things, and they want insurance have been always paying. That's why we take it. Nobody who's insured said, I'm not going because this, then it's good for my insurance. Nobody does. So, and for example, on taking care, it's also, I mean, neighbors, they always comment, in Holland they have buurtzorg, which means people take care of each other very intensively. So neighbors look at the elderly in the street, bring them there shopping, do the shopping, and go to the post office, etc. But this is about culture. If you didn't do that for the last 20 years, here you have a startup, nebenan.de, which is exactly doing this. But it takes time to change from behavior in culture. I mean, a divided country, to be honest, I mean, it takes 2 generations to get back to the same mentality. So these things won't go fast, but back on, this is the reason why you cannot go from country to country in health. And you will see completely different patterns, and you will suffer in one country, while in the other country we will say, well, yeah, of course we're going to reimburse this and we're going to do that, and then in another country, no, we're not going to do that because we don't want it. If you would tell in Holland, again for the pregnancy app, that a midwife is the right person to transport this, no, because there are too many midwives in Holland. It's complete other condition because everybody is giving birth at home. And it's a complete different job. So that's why I distinguish between which country you are strong, and that doesn't mean that you can just export it to any other country right away, and don't do this too early, and take that in your assumptions. That about growth paths, and believe me, also one thing, look where you are exceptional. If the model is too dependent on community visibility, I would call it carefully community visibility. As an investor, I would always say, I have to make the decision if I buy a Google share or I spend €1 in a startup. If at the end, more of 50% of the money I give to you is going to Google, I would prefer to just buy shares at Google. And be aware of this early. I had a startup Fliege. They were burning 200,000 euro a month, of which 116,000 was transferred to me each month. And I said, yeah, but we're growing, our reach. And I said, but this reach is negative. Because it's creating dependencies, which I don't want, because we have to find out. It's good to have somebody invited once, but if I have to re-invite him every time via a third party, I'm not really convinced this is going to work. And this is because here you all come together. So all your competitors, and there are many, are going to look on how do I come to the customer. And coming to the customer is better done via a pathway where not all the others are also there. It's like it's better to go via the back door then instead of via the front with the large queue in front. And this is something you also decide early in your model. Is it a reference market? Is it something I can connect to something else? Also, it can also be a connection. I had the blue example. Can I connect it to another product? Can I connect it to a certain process? Can I connect it to an event? Can I go back physically? Even if it's digital, physical options are often interesting options. And because the battle on who has the best CEO manager is normally far away from your competences, in the sense of that's not, you didn't do it because you don't tell, well, we will find the best CEO manager of all. This shouldn't be. Yeah? And then for having a short break, because then I would like to turn it around to make it to you're telling what you're doing, and I'm going to directly reflect on what do I think, or what do you understand, and how which 3 or 4 advices would I give you independently. Is the way to look on you if somebody is going to invest money is best comparable that, and I always give the advice, if I give you 100,000, give it because I have it, I give it to you, would you yourself keep it or put it in your idea? Because as an investor, if I'm convinced that you would put your 100,000 peer to my 100,000 in the same activity, I'm really convinced that we have a good partnership with an investor. And often people forget this. It's like, if you give me money, I will do the job. And I think that's not the thing I have to decide in that case. It's more about if we both have the same amount, if we both would have the same amount of money, would we both give the same amount of money in that what you do? And if you can really answer this with yes, then you're worth for an investment. And this is often like, nah, I just wanted to try, I had an idea, and I would buy a car. Yeah? And please reflect this honestly to yourself, because I didn't say you're going to get like 100,000 euro, but reflect this honestly to yourself, because the partnership you have at a certain point, and that might not be with the first 25,000 euro, but if you're going to be successful, you will have a relationship to people you never knew before, and you will have a relationship maybe about 10 million. And you are responsible for these 10 million. Because it's given in trust. You are the one who should be sure before taking the money that you really want to have the responsibility for taking this money. And this is if you prepare for that, I think you are much better in your pitchings, because it's about, there are so many people finding reasons not to invest. Yeah, most VCs are not really specialized in why should I invest in your company or your company, but they are a bunch of people who are telling you, we have looked at everything, we found one reason not to invest in your company. It's too early, too late, too high, too low, we never did this, or we don't do Vienna, or we don't do red shirts. They're seeking the reason not to invest. And in fact, you only have a few things to argument why they should invest in your company. And for me, always the most important thing is, would he or she give his own money in the same amount, happily to have it in the quorum, as we do. Because that means you're on the same track. That means you give the same for what's going to happen. And as there are so many outside there, I think this is one thing I would love to give you on the way, because you are battling not only against the whole system, also the money is getting more and more like everyone wants to do something in health. Take the right ones. If the wrong ones, they're not going to go the whole way with you, and then you will have problems on the way. If you don't mind, have a 5 or 10 minutes break, and then we do it the other way around.
Okay. Lunch in about an hour, but we can
You can postpone lunch.
lunch.
Yeah, you can postpone.
Yeah.
It's much interesting. Much more interesting.
Okay. You ask where are you today, you can pin where you are. I mean, this could also be Instagram, but so it's the same thing. It's the same content. So, but they start to ask us to tell what we do. And if they start us to tell us how we feel, they could ask, how's your temperature, how's your heart rate, how's your general well-being. So they would gather a lot of data which are patient-specific. This is also the reason why telemedicine is difficult, because it's completely different if you are in a room with your physician or not. Yeah, because telemedicine is not a miracle. It's Skype for doctors. Yeah. So it's not the innovation level of telemedicine is kind of zero. No, because everybody can do that. I mean, if you have a friend or a relative around you, what do? If you feel ill, you call your friend who is a doctor. That's telemedicine, to be honest. Yeah? So this is not something which is completely new, which is a technical miracle. So, but there are stakeholders that have the opportunity to become a monopolist in health. The reason, and that's also interesting, there is a reason they don't do that yet, because what I said, cultures are so different. What is fascinating in the US, where, I mean, people don't dare to go to a hospital because they think they can go out bankrupt. Of course, American Well has a higher potential in the US, where people just don't go there because they say, if I go there, I am charged so much money, so I would prefer to call a doctor, and I know that I'm going to be paying $25 every 10 minutes. But it's not because it's the better solution, it's because the only affordable solution. And that doesn't mean that American Well will come up with the same business model here, because it's completely different. So this is why it's so difficult to have a monopolist, because there is also not a monopolist in insurance, there is not a monopolist in most things. You only see some monopolists in science. Huh? But that's because they protect it for 10 years, and then at a certain point you see generica coming up, and then they have to reinvent something new. So in the midterm, I think we have a quite stable situation where each country is developing its own e-health pattern. And there will be two main changes. And one is a general discussion we have to have is how comes that we don't have at least a good data sharing. Yeah? So if you ask me, the most easy thing to do is to ask each insurance, could you come up with a particular risk pattern for each insurance person you have? So again, let's take two of us, because we started the discussion, women and men. Our particular risks are definitely show different patterns because of our gender, which is normal. Yeah, I wouldn't go to a gynecologist. Yeah, which is and your risk on prostate cancer is quite low. But so there are already natural differentiation in risk patterns, but also historical. And most insurances are like generations of insured family members. So because this is something we should seem to give from one generation to the next. I have always been at the TK, so be at the TK. Huh? So if I would ask all of you to tell me, do you know how did your grandparents or great-grandparents die, or what did they die of? With which age and with which pre-diseases? I would guess, maybe the doctors and the rest will know, but most people don't know this. This is a very close medical relevant information we have. Insurances normally do have this information. They have it still stored, but they're not allowed to tell you. I always advise them, you could make up a personal pattern. If nobody died on colon cancer, my particular risk on colon cancer is lower than average. If two of them died on colon cancers, I should be allowed to go to colposcopy from 35 or maybe all the way from 30. But why shouldn't I tell them? And why shouldn't I tell the other one? Even if the campaign is the biggest in Germany on colon cancer, I really like the persons behind that because it's a sample of a good campaign. But don't misunderstand, we don't improve health by sending 100% to the colposcopy and check if they have colon cancer, because this depends on my personal risk pattern. So
Same for breast cancer.
it's the same for breast cancer. It is also the same for stroke. If in my family 2 members had a stroke, I should be aware that some pattern seems to be there that my risk is above average. And I think this is something which, and I don't believe this is already artificial intelligence. This is just pure logic. Yeah? If you have an information, use it. So right now we're not using the information on a proper way. So this is the first level we could do. But what is important for you, because this is something you can't change, but the market is not going to be an ecosystem with 10,000 offerings and everybody is going to use 10,000 apps because there is the left toe and the right toe risk. No. An average patient is going to use 2, 3, maybe 5 of those. And I think it would be good that we have an orientation point in which are the 5 apps I should use and 5 things I should take special care of. Then you have the translational pattern, which is very interesting. I think one of the biggest challenges is that I never understood this. I have to look again to who's the doctor besides him. True. When I started at Springer, I saw one of the biggest mismatches in publishing was that you have scientific publishing, you have trade publishing, and then you have yellow press. And we even have a law that on medicine, yeah, that patients and non-professionals should not become data which are accessible to professionals in health. There's a law which was easy to handle once when we had a magazine for a doctor and we had a newspaper for everybody. So there was no mix-up. It was quite easy to say, well, if you print something, you have an address, you know you're sending it to a doctor, so you can do advertising and additional information on products which are not allowed to be displayed in public. This law is still in place, and one of the studies of Bertelsmann which is most astonishing over the last 20 years is a study they did in 2003 and I think 2012, asking doctors if they think that self-information of patients has any positive use or effect on their work. I've never seen something which has changed zero during the 10 hottest year of web and information overload. And doctors were convinced that there is a 30% of patients where it's really useful when they inform themselves because they are intelligent enough to distinguish between good and bad information. But they also convinced that for the other 70%, 50% shouldn't inform at all, and at 20% it's negative. Definitely negative, bad for that. And so back to when I entered Springer, I concluded that there is nearly no information transfer between profession and patients. So you will see a lot of doctors back to diabetes who would just diagnose diabetes and send the patient home without any proper information on his conclusions. He would send him home and say, well, you have diabetes, come back the day after tomorrow, and then we will see what we're going to do. And people go home. So I always wonder, why do you not use this opportunity, which is a milestone, which is a turning point for a patient, and why don't you provide this patient with particular and high effective information on his diagnosis? And still, this nearly doesn't happen. Give you another example. If you go to your pharmacy and you take a medication, and then we talk about how much information do we share, even with the data protection. I mean, if you go to a pharmacy, he knows everything about us. Yeah? He knows who we are. He knows where we have our insurance, our age, our gender. If he does a little work, he can even see what other medications do I have. And what do he ask? Do you want the apothekenumschau? The next thing they do is they are complaining about online competition because we are local and we are the advisors of the patients. There are 3.6 to up to 3.8 million average visits in a pharmacy each day in Germany. The only thing they do is ask for the birthday and give an apothekenumschau. If I come there and I get a strip of a medication which is going to take 8 days, he knows that it's going to take 8 days. He knows what I'm taking it for. He knows exactly what is going to happen in those 8 days because he knows after 2 days of antibiotica there should be a certain effect, otherwise I should return to the doctor because if there is no effect there is something wrong. He knows that a lot of people will stop taking the antibiotica once they feel better. He has all the information, but there is zero pharmacy who is interacting on this pattern. Which would mean, I know what I've given to you, after 2 days I'm going to ask you with a small mail or just a message, do you feel better right now or not? If the answer is no, I should give him a feedback, let's wait until tomorrow, but if we still don't see any effect tomorrow, you should go back to your doctor. If he says yes, he could give the information, happy to hear, but please be aware, take the entire therapy and don't stop, even if you feel better. You might feel a bit uncomfortable in your stomach because, yes, we are not only taking away what you want to be taken away, we have some impact on your flora, and we could help you. If you get some diarrhea, please come back and I will give you another medication. After 7 days, I could tell, well, you should be finished tomorrow. I'm happy to serve you if you have any more questions. This would be a complete easy story. Tell me why they don't do it. It's a miracle because it's easy, it's as easy as telemedicine, but they don't do it. And then they complain about patients who start to go to NetDoctor and come back with rubbish information and telling them, yeah, I have diabetes, I'm going to lose my legs, I'm going to be blind, and I'm going to die. And this is also a playing field where you can interact in, because if you know this is not in place right now, these are the fields where you can just go into. Because there are so many easy things to solve, it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I always say, focus on one thing you can really offer into the system, which is an improvement, only one thing. And don't try to be monopolist, but try to solve an easy problem. And that's, I call it, what's your impact? Not what you value, what's your impact? What are you going to change? And if you can prove that what you have said, what you're going to change is happening, then you create value. Give you another example. I don't understand clinics. Who has been flying the last 4 weeks? Okay. What did you do before?
Before flying? Each flight or in general?
Checking in.
Online check-in.
Check-in.
I mean,
No.
this is about flying. This is not about getting a new hip. If we fly, we will have to check in. We will have to inform that we booked a ticket. We will have to reconfirm. We have to reconfirm that we are going to fly. With a lot of luck, if you don't check in and you go 10 minutes before the flight, you try to say, well, yeah, but I bought a ticket. But they're going to say, yeah, nice, but you didn't check in. You're not on the flight. While checking in, they are asking us if we want to have a special seating. If we say yes, I want to sit at an exit, I always do, because otherwise
You have
modern planes, they
Yeah.
invented one chair extra. I always have to sit on the emergency exits. And then they ask me, are you capable of doing this? And then they tell us, before we can perform, they're telling us, do you want to take extra luggage because you had that and that, and I can do a booking, etc., etc. Tell me, why don't clinics have a check-in?
The same, yeah.
It's easy, it's all there. So you're going to the clinics and they tell you, yeah, here, take a seat, and you have to wait for about 1.5 hours in front of the desk. Then they start to tell you what you have all forgotten, what you should have taken, because otherwise, yeah, you have a pajama, yes, but you have that, and so. And then they're going to start and what's going to happen. Why don't they inform me 6 weeks before? They prepare me for what is going to happen. There is one startup I found very interesting, I don't know, but they are now offering a system which is an algorithm, because a certain percentage, I don't know exactly how much of the operations won't take place because the patient is not in the condition to be operated. So they start to have a check-in process because you can predict if he is in the condition to be operated. So it's not on Monday morning, 2 patients are not going to be operated, so what we're going to do today. Huh? But so there is a lot of logic stuff which is not really high innovative, but which is just very relevant if I would bring it into the system. Now, why are we looking so far away on good solutions if there is still so much to solve just in the sense of normal expectations of the patient? And how do I come to this? If you occupy these kind of milestone points in the process in health, then you can of course deliver a lot of other stuff because you have the right moment, you have the perfect timing. The pharmacy can offer a lot of digital health innovation if they would come into the communication process with their patient. So, and I think they are very grateful because they're running out of their business model.
So is there a problem, as you mentioned, that we don't have like certain chains like Lufthansa, EasyJet, like big suppliers?
That's one of the
because
reasons.
pharmacies are just like owner-driven, independent entities.
That's one of the reasons. Yeah, but even then,
So it would be the Dachverband who has to create solutions.
then you have to decide that the UPDA, which is the Chamber of Pharmacies, but they want something like everybody must like it. And I say, no, you have another problem. That's also, be very, very proud on what you're offering if you go to them, because they are kind of, yes, but we are 20,000, they don't have any problem because they get money from 20,000 pharmacies, they are paying money, and we do a lot of work for the pharmacy because we have a big campaign telling that that online pharmacies are dangerous for the patient. That's what they do. So you should go and say, well, you have a problem, I don't have a problem. Believe me, if you as a startup go to them and tell them, I don't have a problem, I only have an offer. I think you are messing up. I'm not messing up, but I would make you an offer. We could improve the services in your local pharmacy by just giving the opportunity that besides selling products, you could service your patients. And if somebody is buying something because he wants to lose weight, I can go into a coaching at the pharmacy. If somebody is buying something because he wants to reduce stress, I can also help him. If somebody is giving birth, I can just tell him I have a good digital solution for you and I would like to accompany you as a pharmacist. And the interesting thing is, and that's important, and maybe the two doctors can confirm this, health is not only about technique. It's about taking care of persons. So the personal coaching and availability, so what we call care in English, which I like more than pflegen, a patient wants to be taken care of. This is a part of the process. If people ask, how are you today? This is important every morning in the hospital that I get the question. Then I have the feeling people are really interested in my personal condition and what I'm doing. And if I show this interest, I can also help losing weight. I can help improving healthy behavior. I can help taking the barriers. I had a discussion with my co-founder when we did not yet have the company, with Jürgen from the AOK. They did a campaign on healthy behavior, which was called 5 times green. Who knows this? So 5 times a day, fruit or vegetables. And I said, Jürgen, sorry, this campaign is completely bullshit. Because the barrier, people reflect, oh, I'm fine because I am eating 5 times a day fruit or vegetables. But if you have some kind Neanderthalic person who is only eating meat, and you are telling him to eat 5 times a banana, he will not even start eating one. That's the problem. So I said, well, maybe it's better to tell 1 time green is better than none. And so make a goal achievable. This is also for many digital inventions. It's very important. Make it achievable. If a patient thinks he can never reach that target, he's not going to start. And this is about the motivation. And if I have 1 banana, probably I'm closer to having also an apple a day than if I'm none. And so make it achievable because behavioral pattern changes don't work via the target, but via the first step. If you get people on the first step, this is a stress management app. If somebody is feeling like really like burnout, I mean, even if it's a marketing story or if it's a partial marketing, because it's always dangerous. There are a lot of people who definitely have physical challenges. But so industry is trying to make it a pattern. So, but if I want to take somebody out, it's not about your life is going to be perfect with me. It's about we can help you. Take time 2 minutes a day for yourself. Sit down and don't tell them that they have to do 30 minutes or 2 hours exercises. No. Easy, low threshold starts. And if you find those entry points, these occasions, and for example, giving birth is one. If you ask me on how is the electronic patient file going to work, we all have the problem that our files will be incomplete, of all of us. There is no chance to make it complete again. So if you catch somebody who is pregnant, you catch also somebody who is the only person who can guarantee that electronic patient file in the useful, most meaningful way for a patient is going to be perfect is the birth-giving mother. There is only one entry point into life and into my definitely correct file, and that's giving birth. So if you ask me why do I like these kind of startups right now, is because I think one of the biggest problems is when does this start, and this is when giving birth. That's what I find interesting, because from that point on I should have a complete file set, and that's interesting. I'm really interested. And there are more reasons for that, because at a certain point we think that organic printing is going to become state of the art. I don't know if this is going to last 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, but we all have the problem that we never have given any pattern at the right time, which also is giving birth is a good moment to storage our best possible biological material for later organic printing. But this will come. But this is not, because I think it's very interesting to have an app which is doing this coaching. This alone is a service which I like, but looking on what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years is that we will see certain location that is 0.0 birth. There a lot of digital information starts to flow on the individual patient by nature. Maybe -9, that's the maximum we can access. Yeah? But this is the framework where this is going to happen. And this will have much more impact with all the innovations we are going to see. This will have impact at a certain point because we will have a lot of medications that are effective to some of us, but not all of us, which is also a cultural change. But what I think is that this is going to be a part of our prognosis pattern, because we're not going to ask afterwards, we are going to answer up front which therapy is going to be my therapy. So this is all coming from, is there going to be a monopolist? Not yet. But of course we will see big companies will have a big stake in health. And I don't think these are going to be insurance at all. No, because insurance, I think that and we see in countries where we are changing to tax-related payment models, which is much easier to handle. Because already today, insurances are not paid by 100% by their own contributions. We have a largest tax stake, which is paying the deficit. we also see the same thing in care. We are putting more and more tax money into the system. And why should we have 115 insurances when more and more parts of the money is directly from taxes? And I think this is true for most countries. We will see the typical general models. So we have like NHS, we have just services which are paid for. Not everything. We will have to have our own insurances for additional services, which is the single room, which is the high-end technology, because we also will see more and more technology, so which wheelchair can I get? Robotics is going to change a lot, so we will not sit in chairs anymore, we will have a skeleton and we will walk. So not every insurance, this is not the base model, not everybody is going to get that. We see that also because we have diabetes once in a while in our day-to-day. Roche and other companies are working on long-term applications, so you only have something every 12 months and everything is fine. And they think that this is going to be a private insurance issue because it's comfortable, but it does not improve the patient's therapy outcome in general. It's just more comfortable. It's luxurious. So we will see things we have to pay ourselves or buy insurance, but the general healthcare system will more and more internationally be a tax-driven one. That also makes sense because the competition, and we had that, if we would like to pay more for staying healthy and less for curing, it's better to have only one stakeholder who's doing the pay. Because it's very difficult to in a competition, it's very difficult. Data in a competition is very difficult. We're just discussing with companies like Cisco on why are 115 insurances are now making each their own data container. It's completely bullshit. Put it all like text. Our text files are all in one container. It's quite private data. Sensitive data, but there is only one storage. And if I move from Munich to Berlin, I will just get another ID, but it's in the same central logic storage. Why do we have a model for health where it's in 115 containers, and when I change from one insurance to the other, I am dependent on one giving data to another? It's not going to stay like this. I'm very sure on that. And it's not efficient, it's very expensive, and it is one of the reasons why everything is so slow.
But this could help interoperability, right? Because if the patient has the right to move his own data, so if you have different containers, you have the same data standard. So yes, it's an argument for having different containers where the data is stored.
Yeah, but there is no. Is there a need for having different containers?
No, absolutely not.
So, and I mean, it's part of our money. And I mean, they not only having their own data center, they are having their own solution, they have their own development, they have their own department, they have their own. And I say, and then we're discussing on can we use those data unionized, definitely, for science.
It's the same in the Charité right now, where we create a data lake for scientists. Right now, of course, it's very fragmented and siloed, and every department has its own database and so forth. It's on a smaller scale because it's only the Charité, but there is at least the insight to go for one data pool, so to say. So, of course, it would be great to have Vivantes and all the players, but that's a starting point maybe, and it's close to the same level.
But so we are now talking. Some of these things don't have direct impact on what you're doing today, but so where is the system going to move? But there is no reason to have those data separated long term. because I think that right now we are looking on the data because they are important for our reimbursement processes. These are the data which belong to a patient, and not because somebody's paying for it, but because I want my data set to be best possible available for me. The next thing, what I doubt, is how to motivate everybody to deliver data. Right now, you might have followed Vivi by Allianz. I mean, they forgot to take the doctors into their model. It's a very good sample. They said, you as a patient, you can go to your doctor and ask for your data. There are already doctors, you told about your mom, but there are doctors, they have placed something, we do everything for you but Vivi.
Seriously?
Yeah. You cannot claim you are coming up with a digital, this is a Gesundheitsakte, health file, without involving doctors. To be honest, you're completely crazy. We work a lot with Allianz, but sorry, this is crazy. Not asking the doctors how it's going to work. So, you want to tell her she's charging?
Well, there's no reimbursement system for the doctors who have to, because there's no Schnittstelle where how to transfer the data from the doctor to the health file. So it has to be done manually. So the doctor has to take out of the system the data and put it into the health file.
So doctors should be motivated to do it.
What?
Doctors should be motivated to do it, or need to be motivated, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but they don't get paid for it. Why should they do it? They have no interest in it. Long term it may help treat them, but at the moment there's no one who pays for the time they put in. It will take like 3 or 6 hours to put in the data from one file to the other. And who's gonna, if you do that for all your patients, my mom has like 2,000 patients. If you do that for everyone 3 hours, 6 hours, it's an enormous amount of time you have to put in.
But why are they not asking the patient for permission to get the insurance's invoice data? They're all the diagnosis and all the treatments as well. And they have it in the database because they got reimbursed the physicians. So you don't have to go to the
It's
physician.
true, but Vivi is from the Allianz, it's a private insurer.
Yeah.
And the other, why should the other insurances who are working on
The
their own
consult-
models?
But it's still individually, right? So
No, but Vivi is not for everybody. So this is like if you would have a gas station for each car company, and you can only go to the gas station from Volkswagen if you have a Volkswagen, and you have to go to the Mercedes gas station when it's a Mercedes.
Mhm.
But it's the same. It's the same tool, but it doesn't fit.
yeah, the same data structures.
Yeah, but
Interoperability.
But it's not in place, so how?
It's not in place, but they're working on it. Like HR7, fire.
yeah, they're working on it, but still, you could better say, well, we have one container, and everybody has the same logic to take out data. But if you tell a doctor you have 113 containers, and they are the same because they're the same. The only bit different. I've never seen, even if you within single products, if you go from word 0 to word 10, there will be mismatches somewhere. It's the same standard. It's all a doc. So, but if you tell, well, we have 130 formats, they all dock 1 to 113, they are particularly similar because they have the same. It's not going to work. It's a ridiculous idea. The idea itself, this is not our topic. It's crazy. It's fully bullshit. If you want to improve the world, if you stand on a platform and say, we in Germany, we want to be #1 in e-health, then this decision is ridiculous. You should just say, there is one data file, and you will all have to do it. The second thing you have to do,
So one container you do.
yes,
But it's still a health economic, it's Gesundheitswirtschaft. And in the tax analog, it's completely different because it's a state.
no, but I said before, it's gonna be a tax finance system anyway.
Tax funded.
Yes,
Yeah, hopefully not.
it is. There is no alternative.
So, how do you have numbers, the proportion, like the money from taxpayers. Well, it's not taxpayers' money.
It's taxpayers' money because
It's taxpayers' money, but it's
the contributions by the insurance is not enough, so it's augmented by.
Yeah, this is what I would be interested. Like the augmented amount, is it significant?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's already 15 billion a year, only for health. And we assume that it's going to be 30 to 40 billion for care additionally. Yeah?
Yeah, but this is what they are arguing right now for care, that they want to reach out to the German household.
Because no politician is willing to tell that our insurance costs for health are going to be 22 to 25% in the next 10 years. Nobody's going to tell that story. And that's why they're going to tell, no, we're going to do it on the tax. And if you look at the countries where it's tax-based, we have to be honest, it works better.
Yes.
What works better?
The countries, Scandinavian countries, all tax-based.
Well, Scandinavian countries don't have the size and the numbers insured compared to
But
Germany.
I try to tell you before, it's not about size. On the cost of health in the European Union and outside of the European Union, Western Hemisphere, are in average the same. It's plus minus 1.5%. Yeah? The life expectations are the same. The system uses this amount of money, and especially because we get elder, especially because we have more care proportion versus health proportion, it grows. So, and I mean, the number of patients with dementias will double in the next 20 years. We cannot avoid it right now, and a patient with dementia costs 40,000 to 42,000 plus extra per patient coming up, so this is 10 times the amount an average is paid to an insurer.
So you're arguing for a state-controlled, organized healthcare system?
It is.
It's not. Selbstverwaltung is something in place.
It's a placeholder to allow politics to say we are independent, we are not responsible.
Yeah.
But if you look on the money side, if you have 115 euros, you collect the money, put it in one bucket. You can you can have a self-management. It doesn't matter. And then you say, all what is missing in this bucket we will pay by taxes. That's how it's done right now. So we put in the additional 15 billion, because otherwise each insurance would have 15.
So the thing is just it's just a historical thing that the Selbstverwaltung, they doesn't have any right to exist actually. If you would look at it, it's a lobbying and self-enrichment. If you put it politically, it's a thing that's actually not working, I think, and that's going to be abolished within the next 10, 20 years. So if there's some courageous politician who will say, we have to get rid of that. There's so much money spent not on patients, not on care, but on the self-management thing. So that's
it's already in process. If you, maybe it's, it's
it's
getting too political for. Maybe we should do that at lunch. But if you look on
But the state doesn't make anything better, it just makes everything worse.
No, but there is a way to make this simpler, because this is a classic debate. I also see it in healthcare management school. We talk about this often. The system of insurance reimbursement is not an efficient system, because it doesn't make sense that health is controlled by companies that are run in a business way. You still have to take care of people, and the end result of healthcare should be improved health, not maintained healthcare system. So the outcome through the insurance system does not make sense. So the end result with innovation, etc., it doesn't drive cost management, and it doesn't drive cost efficiency through the insurance system. This is, I think, what the main point is. And through the potential tax payment system, the main drive will be better outcome, because better outcome saves money. Sooner or later, saves people, saves money. And it doesn't matter what the country thinks about it. It's just that the basic logic is once the tax is in question, so the tax money, then the profit is out of the picture. And the main thing is innovation is much easier. This is, for example, I don't know, if you look at Scandinavian countries, Denmark, etc., innovation is much faster in getting reimbursed and just entering the system, because the promise of innovation is some sort of improvement. Either outcome, cost saving, etc., and it's the drive is there. So I do agree on this stuff, and I think it's.
But it is not even my opinion. It's just
No,
a
it's just
prediction
like-
what's going to happen.
Where it's going.
So I wouldn't dare as a Dutch person to say is it better to give it to a politician or to a CEO of an insurance. I think if you look on the self-regulation, it will not disappear. There will still be institutions who tell what is then to be done with this money, which is something different. But now we're collecting it via 115 instances, and then we are giving it back via key, and then we put on some taxes because it's not enough. So that at long term does not really make sense. We have too many clinics, we have too many insurances, we have too many, and I mean, and if you don't ask, what are we going to change? Every major, and that's the problem of politics, I fully agree, every major says, well, I need my voters here, so I need a clinic in Hintertupfel. Yeah? So, but, what's going to happen? This is important for you, because otherwise you will never have the place for innovation. Because that means if you want to change things, it shouldn't be in a competitive because also that's ridiculous. If TK is picking you up as a partner, AOK will say we're going to do something different. So it's never about is it the best solution, because normally they say, well, we won't do that what our competitor is doing.
Yeah, but that's
But who has-
exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem for if we can't wait for the system to change. You really have to partner up probably with one of the big, and then we create dependencies. But on the other hand, we have a lot of impact. If you choose TK, for example, 10 million, let's say. So we can reach 10 million patients, but as you say, then the AOK will tell on their side, this is probably not a good solution because TK is doing that. So what's your suggestion, or what's your input on that? How should we go? Because that is very crucial for us to find the right partner. As you said before, the 10 partners.
Yeah.
And then, but if we choose one, the other we might lose, and so
That's definitely very realistic risk, especially in the first 2 to 3 years of the company, and then it might change. There are 2 things to avoid. What's succeeded twice is just to tell them we will not cooperate with you if you have an exclusivity. You can say that from the beginning. You can, but you have to be quite stable on your feet to say, well, we would only do it with you if we do it with at least 2 other insurances. We've seen this work, but it's difficult. The second thing, it's okay if you and then we say there are only 3 you can really negotiate with. That's TK, AOK, BAME. All others are too small in stake that they are reliable, and they are comparable to one each other. So because you have broad impact. What we have seen, because I had a sample Mimi is paid for by BAME since 2 years, and they pay for everybody. That can also be regulation. They say we will do it with you, but it should be available for all 100% of the citizenship. That's what we did with BAME and Mimi. They are paying for everybody, but they are in an exclusive partnership to Mimi. So then they have the marketing effect that everybody is confronted, even if he's from TK. You will see the BAME logo when he's doing the test.
okay.
And that's something you can negotiate. But right now it's difficult to avoid that conflict.
That's very interesting and very essential, I think, for the next few steps. steps for us.
Yeah. And the second thing, a real lifetime sample, we have it with Carrot here, who is doing dietist advice. There are, of course, things that are already reimbursed. Yeah? So a dietist, you can reimburse, I think 5 sessions, approximately €200. You have to pay €80 yourself, the rest is reimbursed. Then you can just go, because then it's justified. You say, I have an offering which is reimbursed, and I just want you to pay because this is legal and this will work. That's only true for some few, and then you have to prove that you finish it, and that's again a problem because the entire journey of your model is then on your own payroll. Yeah, because you have to prove that what they paid is done. So Housemid was a startup. They failed on that because they had good programs for stop smoking, etc. But they had to return so much money because a lot of people didn't finish the course.
Why they didn't finish?
Paid by outcome.
They paid by outcome, yeah. So, and I mean, that's patience. If they start and say, okay, I will try it after 2 weeks. To be honest, I don't want to stop it.
Okay.
So
Can I ask a related question on digital therapeutics? So we mentioned MySugar, so there's a whole category of apps in digital health that is more tracking, monitoring, a bit of like companion. It doesn't really do much for you. Maybe understand a bit more about yourself. Then there's now with AI, there's more predictive analytics. We can identify stuff early. Its potential to help. Then there's like real potential for digital therapeutics, and you can change exercise or mental health or behaviors through an app. But then companies like Cara are forced to kind of move towards telemedicine because that's how the system is. But the problem with the system is the scarcity of doctors and dietitians or the poor service they offer. But what they are doing, they're just taking that capacity, limited capacity, putting it online, and they get the reimbursement instead of actually innovating and providing everything through an app, which could be done if people stuck to apps and engage. So how do you see potential to like make real digital therapeutics happen and be reimbursed without having to like compromise patient outcomes because that's how the system is?
Well, go back to Carrot. Their original idea definitely was we can do that on a digital base. So, and the danger is also what they do now is that it's very headcount intensive. I don't like the ideas where you say, well, we have 400 dietists, we pay them all. And then there is some change in law and reimbursement, and then you have those 400 therapists. So I definitely agree that the first thing is how do we come back that we can use technology to have a high effective tool that everybody can use and where you have to pay less. 2-3 things which are achievable is, and I think that's important, is that of course, again here is can you match one service with another? If you look at Carrot here to say that you could offer your own digital solution and look at that, and that's something they oversaw, is that the insurance themselves have dietists. So you say, well, I'm the layer with the digital solution, but whenever you need a dietist, we would just forward you to a paid dietist. If they would have done that, maybe they can just repair this, because what did the Alcalá say? Well, we're not going to reimburse it anymore because we just tell them if somebody wants it. We have our own dietists, and now they are competitive. Yeah, so we're not going to pay a third party, but we have persons ourselves. So what they do, if there comes in a file, we want to do the car care, they say, happy to meet you, we have our own dietist. And you can take that one for free, or you have to pay 80 euro, you take the other one.
My point is, how do you not need a dietitian in the first place, and you just deliver everything digitally, which you could, but because the system has human dietitians being reimbursed, then you end up providing human dietitians. My point is, how can you get reimbursed for a digital dietitian, which you could do to an app?
Right now you can't.
But how do you change the system to like actually really do digital solutions versus digitized human solutions?
Well, this is and again, I should refer to politics, which I don't like. Yeah? This is something we also address in politics, is that they will have to find a regulation on when must an insurance reimburse a digital service. Today, it's the other way around. Yeah? They could come up to an agreement with you and say, we're going to pay you for this. It's the €3 on the left side. They could do. You have to be, depending on what your offering is, yeah, you need your certifications. But then they would say, okay, we're going to do this. And then you have two problems. One we hear, yeah? You're doing this only for one insurance, so you are already dependent on probably the infrastructure and the visibility of this insurance. Because your model is also endangered if they don't pay for all. So if they come to your offering and they say, well, where are you insured? Oh, sorry, take out? No, you can't. You have to pay yourself. Barmer is good, Barmer pays for it. This is already a conflict, because this is very difficult for you to manage. But, so you can, in that case, what I would do is look on who is also interested in the same target group. And this could be companies like Johnson & Johnson, or those who are offering supplements, and then you can say, well, we would do the offering, and we would connect it to your offerings. This could be a pharmaceutical company. The pharmacies, if dietists, I think everybody is involved with this issue, is going to pharmacy to see pharmacists. At a certain point. So you could say, well, let's match up with Novida, for example, who's 9,000 pharmacists, and tell, could we be a digital extension? We would like the pharmacy to sell it, because it's digital use case, what the cost should be better than if you need the dietist. So they can sell it. I don't know what your business model is at that point. We pay the pharmacist if he sells it from his store to you, so he will have an idea or a coupon or whatever. But they are a good entry point to the market. And they are somebody that say, well, instead of going to the AOK, I will coach you. We have a good program. Yeah, let's do it. But you will need your sales structure instead, if it's not the insurance. And I think it's not the App Store.